Because I was exposed to sex so early on, I became a hypersexual person, including as a woman. But when you're a slut as a woman, I mean, feminism applauds it. Like, you know, people would be like, yes, and like...
like, yes, bitch, get.
Yes, exactly.
You are empowered.
I had so much pride in being a slut.
Awesome.
But now I'm a fuckboy.
Hey guys, welcome back to the show. I'm Mario.
And I'm Peter.
And we're
Guys That Listen.
On today's show, we have Alejandre Cristo Maria Rigoberto Rodriguez. I'm just kidding. Alejandre Rodriguez. Tell us a little about yourself.
I mean, I started with talking about like why I reached out to y'all, which was like the research aspect of things. The fact that y'all talk about relationships, I like that. And because I feel like transgender people are never really included in the conversation around romantic relationships. We're usually either, oh, by the way, I'm trans.
So good.
We're not usually included in the conversation around being romantic relationships. We're usually learned about in the context of porn or being horror characters in these like classic horror films.
Oh, really?
There's just like the most people are exposed to transgender people not through like, oh, it's because a friend's daughter is trans or because my kid has a friend who's trans. Nowadays, maybe, but a lot of people, maybe like millennial and before that, have been exposed to transgender people through porn or through Hollywood.
Yeah.
It's always a taboo topic. It's never something that's just a normal thing.
So you said you're 27?
Yes.
When does Gen Z start?
I'm on the cusp. I'm
So you're on the
95
cusp.
because like I don't remember the 90s enough to fit in with the early millennials.
Yeah.
And I get along a little bit more with Gen Z. So I honestly get along more with Gen Z.
So that's why I want to
early
ask you about,
millennials.
because, you know, you said a lot of those things weren't talked about. And we were talking about really, really old Hollywood and like, you know, television.
The classic, actually.
Yeah, the classic.
Yeah.
And, you know, you say that you get along more with Gen Z, and I feel like things now, you know, because I'm a millennial, right? I'm in my 30s. I feel like Gen Z is still definitely not talked about enough, but I feel like the acceptance and like that conversation, that topic is way more open than, you know, millennials or even boomers, especially, you know? So you're on the cusp. You've talked to early age millennials and then Gen Z. Do you feel like there is a difference in understanding about the trans topic?
I think because it's become a lot more common to talk about.
Yeah.
Because it's become, I guess, just a topic that's talked about more often. They were exposed to it much earlier on, so it was just normalized for them.
Yeah.
Much earlier on than it was for, I think, people in earlier generations that maybe they were exposed to it through classic movies. Like if you grew up in the 80s, you probably only heard about a trans person through, what's that one? Is the Sleepaway Camp movie? Basically, there's like a horror character. He's like the murderer. He's a murderer in a camp and he's killing everyone. And then they reveal at the end, it's actually a woman with a penis. And it's it's actually like the big reveal. Like, and there's like scary music. And it's like, she's trans.
And she kills you with her dick.
Whoa, really? That's what they had back then? That's crazy. I've never...
There's a whole documentary on it on Netflix.
Wow. Oh, documentary on that. Is that how you know about it? Because I was like, did you watch the movie?
No, I in my research, I wish I had it with me right now. I just identified a lot of films and how they represented transgender people were usually like the butt of the joke. Like the movie White Chicks. The whole joke is that they're men dressed up as women, kind of passing as women. Like everybody treating them like it's funny. And it's like, haha, that's the joke. Or I think trans women especially become like the butt ends of jokes often. Like it's the pun, or I feel like I need to come up with a joke for it to make sense.
Does the trans community not like white chicks?
I mean, I don't want to focus on like, oh, what things are okay and not okay.
Okay.
Yeah, no, you're fine.
That's not very like helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So can I ask, like,
Yeah.
again, you know, we want to know about you and your experiences,
Right.
you know, what's true to you, because that's the best thing to speak on. So, you know, we talk about when we were, or in general, what the population was exposed to as far as media, but when were you exposed to the transgender community or just transgender?
I think there's a difference between, you know, reading an article on the internet and actually knowing someone who's trans and being friends with them and
you
knowing
have
them as a
two
person.
examples? So like
I
article
remember
and person?
reading an article, and I was maybe like, I don't know, 12 or something. And I
wow.
remember reading an article that said, man is pregnant, or something along those lines. Something that's like a catch grab, you know, or a attention grabber. And I was like, what? How could a man get pregnant? And then they, you know, probably include the word transgender man. So it's kind of like, it's just one of those weird cases. It's just one of, like, some of those people exist, but you don't think much of it. You don't think about, and the stigma towards trans men is different and slightly less visible than the stigma against trans women. Because I think when people think of trans women, maybe in their mind they're thinking of drag queens. They're thinking of porn where they use terms like she-male, or they use tranny, or they use he, she, or there's so many slanderous terms against them. But that's different, obviously, from actually knowing a trans person as a person, personally, because you're not just totalizing them into one identity of them being transgender. You know that whole person.
So when was your first experience with me and
right,
knowing
right.
a trans person?
This girl named Kylie, she was in a punk band and I was in the punk scene, and when she would perform, she would wear a bikini and she would write on her body kind of like a fuck you, deal with it. Because people wouldn't like that. They wouldn't like seeing a trans woman being confident and performing in a band, being like center stage.
That sounds hella
center of
punk, though.
attention. She was having so much fun.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I found her really hot. And so I dated her not dated her, sorry. I went on a date with her. We had a fling. And then when I got back home, that's when she said, you actually said a lot of really fucked up things, a lot of transphobic things to me while you were here. And I was like, what?
And this was before you transitioned.
This was before I transitioned, right. I think one of the situations she mentioned where I like said something was, we were at Target and I was helping her find a skirt because at the time I was very feminine. I would dress up all the time. It really was kind of just like playing dress up. Now I know, but I was helping her choose a skirt, and she put on the skirt. She wasn't liking how it fit on her body because she transitioned as an adult too, so estrogen doesn't have as much of a shaping effect on your body. Like, sure, your fat gets transferred around a bit, but she was still very insecure about her body. And me, thinking I was trying to help her feel better, I said, "Ooh, well, at least your legs don't have cellulite because, you know, male skin doesn't get cellulite." And on my end, I was like, women value having smooth legs without cellulite, therefore I'm complimenting you. Whereas she heard it as, you just called my skin male skin.
Oh.
And making her pay attention to her insecurities, like the main insecurity.
So that's a microaggression.
Like, you're not appreciating that she has transitioned. Like, you still got that male aspect to you.
That's basically, what I was saying, which is like, she's kind of, the reason why it's like she was so like, is because it's not like we don't know about our own insecurities. Like, we know what they are. Like, I know what things I'm insecure about. But when people point it out to you and they try to frame it like if it's a compliment.
So let me ask you, because I've got, not in trouble, but I had experienced something similar where like there was someone and their significant other was a trans man. And I didn't even, then she told us and I was like, whoa, he looks so good. Like, I had no idea. And I'm like, can I tell him he looks like really great? Like, they did a great job, you know? And now she's like, no, you can't say that. That's I don't know if she said microaggression or something, but I was like, I just wanted a compliment. And I'm like, dude, I couldn't even tell, you know? Is that wrong? Is that like messed up?
I take it as like, I've learned to take it as like, yes, I transition well. Thank you. Like, I was hot before and I'm hot now.
Nice.
So when people tell me that, that's how I take it.
Yeah.
But in a sense, what you're saying is you're good for a trans person. What might be an equivalent? You look good for
Asian person? I have gone that. See, you're kind of cute for an Asian guy. I'm like, damn.
So
Thank you.
It's a similar thing as that.
I can see that that thread, I guess. But like for me, there's no malice behind it, and it makes me question sometimes over like, and maybe this is fucked up, and I'm sorry if I get canceled on this, but like sometimes there's like an oversensitivity in like some of like the culture, and I was like, hey, like for me, I'm like, dude, you look like great, like they did such a great job. There's no malice. I'm not saying just because you're a trans person. I'm like, damn, you used to be a girl, now you're a dude. I can't even tell. Like that's great.
I think what Mario is saying also, which maybe if you elaborate on, it's like.
What do you mean by they did such a good job?
Huh?
Yeah.
What do you mean by they did such a good job?
Oh, I mean, just like the way he, I don't know if he got work done or presented himself.
We had no idea.
Yeah, I had no idea. It's like, I'm assuming, so this is my assumption, you correct me if I'm wrong. The assumption when you feel this way, when you transition is like, you have this idea in your head of who you want to be and how you want to be perceived, because inside it's telling you like, I'm not a woman, I'm a man, And it's like the way you dress, the way maybe you act, and maybe like, the stuff you take, like hormones and stuff. It's because like inside you feel like a man, And so for me, it's
that's not my experience particularly.
Oh, okay. So that's my assumption,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But with that experience, and I think too, at least maybe I'm speaking for Mario, but I think he also meant like if you were just even not even a trans man, just like a regular man, you look great.
Yeah.
I think if I didn't say anything, most people wouldn't realize it.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
no, exactly.
So
like,
that's right.
Like if someone compliments you, like, hey, Ali, you look great. Like, but they throw in like, oh, if they knew, right? And they'd be like, oh, yeah, you look great, like, as a man.
But now they're
it's
even more impressed by it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they were just,
you
in
can't tell.
general, it's a compliment, right? And that's a fine line that we always like tread, but it's unknowingly, if we were to say it without knowing, we would have said it, as a compliment in general.
I think it's more of you're assuming a lot about how we navigate the world.
Yes, and that's why I ask.
So it's kind of like
I'm here to learn.
I'm wondering whether instead of saying it as they did a good job, instead of being like, wow, you did great.
Oh, okay.
Because it's actually very much like an active process where you have to. I mean, everybody's transition story is different. The reason why people transition is completely different, but and the journeys and what that looks like is completely different. Mine in particular, now that I'm on the other side, I can look back and see that the reason why I transitioned was mostly to escape gender violence, as in, I went through a lot of like child sexual assault. I grew up in South Central too, and so every day I would walk to the bus stop. I would get catcalled.
Wow.
Every single day. I remember this one time that
This was as a child?
probably ever since I started walking towards the bus stop, which might be like starting at 11 years old up to maybe 19.
Is that normal to happen in that area? Or just
You
want to
ask every single woman friend you have how often they get catcalled when they walk down the street.
Yeah.
Most of them will probably say yes every day.
Well, see, that's kind of what's crazy to me is that when you said around when you're 11, most of the catcalling that I've seen is done by adults. So in every single way, that's fucking wrong.
Yeah.
Like imagine like a 20-year-old catcalling like a 11-year-old child, like down the streets. That's
So
fucking
weird.
disgusting. Like
I
what
do have a friend who's told me that before when she was in like middle school. She would walk home here in Santa Ana, and she would get like the whistles. Like,
Yeah.
Hey,
yeah.
It's super common, I think, especially among older men. That's kind of how, this is me assuming, honestly, from witnessing just my uncles who are mostly they're all Mexican from a ranch. A lot of them are alcoholics. A lot of them come from a history of domestic violence. A lot of them, I know for a fact, probably experienced some sort of like sexual abuse themselves. But I don't know. I've seen my uncles, for example, at parties watch porn together.
That's
And
weird.
it's fucking weird. And like to see that kind of behavior really among a lot of men every day as a woman, like ever since you're a kid, you start realizing how common it actually is.
Oh, that's wild.
So I guess, the fact that y'all find it wild, I'm like, what are you talking about? Like me and all the women who I've made friends with, actually a lot of trans people, every time I meet them, we usually go over trauma stories.
this is the perfect place for that.
Basically, I'm pretty sure me transitioning was a way of escaping the roles and the violence that was put on me every single day since I was a kid. But also it was kind of gifting my childhood self because when I was a kid, I didn't know I was a girl. or I didn't. I remember in middle school when I started growing titties, and my mom was like, "Honey, you have to start wearing a training bra." I was like, "Why?" She's like, "Because you're growing boobs." And I was like, "What are you talking about? My dad and my brother who are obese have boobs. They don't have to wear a bra." So I didn't get it.
Yeah.
And so when she explained to me, "No, you're a girl. It's different." Along with the fact that when I was trying to get a boy's attention and he had the attention of like a pretty girl, I was like, "Oh, I have to dress up. Oh, I am this thing, and this is what girl is supposed to be, and that is what I am. Therefore, I have to do that if I want to be accepted, if I want to be likable, if I want to be loved, if I want to be connected." And I think that's generally what most people are seeking. They want to be liked. They want to be accepted and loved among their like friends. I think that's just what I was trying to do. So I did basically socialize myself into femininity. And it always was fun. It was literally like playing dress up. And I was artistic. And the fact that I could do art with my hair and my makeup and my clothes. I would always sew patches on my clothes. I would like cut them up and like shape them in different ways. I would dye my hair in a bunch of crazy patterns and try different hairstyles. I was into like pinup hairstyles, do my makeup all like wild and out there. I was just artistic and I was just expressing myself. And it wasn't until that situation with Kylie where she committed suicide and I started learning a little bit more about gender nonconformity, gender exploration, that I was like, oh shit, I never thought I was a girl. Or I never knew I was a girl. I kind of like, not forced myself into it. I convinced myself to start just doing feminine, girly things so I could get the affection from men that I wanted, I guess, or women too. But honestly, it was mostly like I wanted guys' attention.
It sounds like you were following these like preset rules of society where it's like, this is what someone
Like, this is the script? Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Got it. Follow.
Because there was no script for someone who doesn't feel that way at the time, you know?
And I grew up a chubby kid. And when you are a chubby Latina girl, you're not a pretty girl.
Yeah.
You're probably like a niche. And you also have to overcompensate because you're not seen as like feminine enough, or I guess I didn't feel feminine enough. So I felt like I had to overcompensate, be over the top, overly feminine. And then I would go out wearing, you know, a short cheetah skirt with some fishnets and like makeup and hair all done. But I'm also like 15 years old and I'm walking through South Central.
Oh, okay.
And my mom would be like, "You look like a prostitute."
You definitely got catcalled.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. But that was me literally just like exploring just like femininity. I was trying to find what felt right for me at the time. And the fact that I went through that whole like I put myself through all that into becoming a woman up until I was 22, and then I just decided to fucking flip a switch and like, all right, I'm gonna join the other team now.
Wow.
It wasn't.
So it wasn't even like a gradual like transition. It wasn't like, oh yeah, you know, I felt like I was a man in a woman's body, but it actually just happened really. It happened all at once. Like it happened when you were 22 or during the time you met Kylie.
I think it was more just I reflected on how I perceived myself as a child, and me relating to these descriptions of what transgender, gender nonconforming, because I actually didn't relate with the title of like trans man or even non-binary. I think gender fluid was the most fitting for me because I was like, sometimes feeling like a girl, sometimes feeling like a guy. It switches around. The severity of it switches around. It feels like I'm going like this all the time, just kind of dancing.
Fluid.
And at the time, I mean, I guess if you have something that describes a part of your personality, like something that's very innate to you, you start relating with it. And I was like, oh, I guess that is me. I guess I am gender fluid. Huh. And you start, I don't know, just exploring the idea. So it's actually not like a sudden thing like, okay, I'm this now. Oh, that's what I am. I figured it out. No.
Yeah.
It's more like I became curious about a very young part of myself and just kind of decided to go back and explore that.
Do you feel like you're still figuring it out?
There's a reason why they call it a second puberty.
Oh, I've never heard of that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I went through my first puberty as a woman, and then I transitioned, and I've been on testosterone for about 5 years. And, going through testosterone maturation, cisgender men do it within, 10 years-ish? Like, when you hit puberty to, adult male.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess so. It's supposed to. We stopped
Might
at
hit
like
puberty
25,
around 12,
and then
13.
I would say like 13.
Yeah,
12 years,
up to what?
25 or something like that.
Yeah, that's a long time.
Yeah.
I'm doing that within a period of a few short years.
Yeah.
That's a lot of strain to put on your body.
Yeah. So I'm extremely curious as to what was the process of taking testosterone, but what were the stages? I'm assuming again, just like your thoughts of transitioning, it's not overnight. Like you don't take testosterone once and you're like, oh shit, like I feel like completely different.
Buff now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, this is just my particular experience.
Yeah, of course.
I genuinely feel like my experience can invalidate a lot of trans people's experiences because a lot of people do feel very solid in no, I have always felt like someone who was a cis male at birth, and they're like, no, I've always felt like a girl. I always knew this was it, and it just took me a while to catch on and to start the procedure. Once they find out that it's a thing they can do. For me, it was more like no, I was having fun with what I was doing. I was good, but I actively chose to explore a part of myself that I had just put away for a long time.
Oh.
Your childhood, basically.
Yeah. Again, as someone who experienced child sexual assault, I didn't get the chance to find out what sexuality and gender was for myself. It was always for someone else. It was always in favor of someone else. It just was never for me.
Got it.
So I think me doing that as an adult was trying to reconnect with that younger part.
So, just out of my curiosity, and maybe kind of stepping away from the trans topic right now, like you said, you went through child sexual assault, and I feel like that's a big deal. I'm curious as to, because I've never been through it. I don't think Mario has either.
You have.
I guess I was a child, I was 17, close to adult. But I just want to ask, as during that time when you were female and you went through that, how did you deal with it? Because that is something that stays with people for a long time.
It's still with me.
Yeah. So
I'm not over it.
how do you cope?
I feel like the most difficult parts is relationships. I feel like I didn't get a chance to learn about sex in the same way that most of my friends did.
Yeah, that was
they
taken away
learned
from
about
you.
it in a romantic, voluntarily, willful, fun process. Maybe a lot of people didn't, but I learned it when I wasn't even aware of what was going on. I was a kid,
Yeah.
and I learned about, and it's something that happened over years because when you learn about it as a child, you're like, this is just a thing that people do. It's a thing but it's a thing that's done to you. And it continued for years. Basically, it was abuse that continued for years.
Were you aware of what was going on exactly?
I mean, even if you're aware of it, you're a kid.
Yeah. So as a kid, did you feel weird about it? Did you think it was normal or
I thought I haven't thought about that, honestly. I don't think about how I felt back then. When you're going through trauma, your brain doesn't really process things in the moment. It's literally just trying to survive. Actually, I'm pretty sure I disassociated most of the time.
Yeah. A lot of people suppress those things too.
Yeah, when you go through trauma, your brain literally is off.
Yeah.
And you don't really remember things very concretely.
So my question is, I wonder because
Oh, did I know whether
did
it
you
was,
know if it was wrong or right? Did it make you feel weird or were you oh, this is just a thing we do? Because I wonder, since you're a child, you don't have the frame of reference to which is oh, this is right, this is wrong, But I'm sure there's some internal part of you that will recognize oh, this is something. And I just wonder if you recall what that feeling was at that time as a child.
Because I'm sure there's a lot of people who go
I'm
through
pretty
it similarly.
sure. I'm pretty sure I didn't think. I'm pretty sure I thought it was normal.
Yeah.
To me, it was just a thing that happened every now and then, and I don't think I realized it was anything bad until I actually started learning about what sexual assault is. Before that, it was a weird thing that some people would do, and then when I was older, they stopped doing it, and I had no idea why. I saw it as there is this vulnerable act happening, and it's a thing that's happening, and then suddenly it just stopped, and I have no idea why.
Oh, wow.
Until I realized, oh, they were assaulting me for years, and it's bad. And as I got into relationships, like romantic ones, and I would have sex with my partner in the same way that I knew how to, the same way that I've learned how to all those years ago. And I feel like as an adult, feel like I'm still having sex in the exact same way.
Do you feel like you're having a hard time breaking past that trauma? Yeah, because it sounds like it sounds like, through that sexual assault, it almost programmed you to think like, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is how I'm supposed to.
It's more of an autopilot thing.
Yeah.
It's more like, because again, this was trauma.
Yeah.
I would disassociate, I'd go on autopilot. So it's kind of like when I start getting into things, there's a high chance that I will go into autopilot.
Have you found yourself ever getting out of autopilot? Have you?
Yeah, very rarely though. It's usually when I do something new.
Can you like elaborate on that?
When it was something new, when it was like a sexual act that I had never tried before, and it was with someone who was very safe, and I was just focused on having fun and enjoying the moment. Because the sexual script of like girl in sex is usually bottoming, being submissive, penetration, blowjobs, like you said, being the top, and just I don't know. That was completely new territory for me.
So how did
Are you a dom?
No.
Oh.
I said I'm a top. There's a difference. Top, but when I say top, I don't mean it in the gay sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
being on top as a woman.
I mean like the one who might be leading, the one who's initiating, the one who's making the decisions while having sex. That I think it was probably the most. I don't like the word empowering, but
No.
I felt something that I hadn't felt before during sex. It was very.
So you took control.
I was an active, willful participant.
Yeah.
Because before you weren't.
I was just a passive participant.
That makes a lot of sense.
Can I ask you, what made this person like a safe space for you? That was so different.
I think it was the first time that I was dating a cisgender woman as a trans man. And we genuinely found each other really hot. We genuinely got along and had a really strong emotional connection. So it's like and we were good friends too. So it's kind of like just the foundation was there for that situation to feel safe and fun, and just didn't care about anything else, about how you were performing.
I have a question, and this might be very insensitive. So, we can edit this out too if you don't want to answer. How big is your dick?
What do you mean?
Do you get to choose?
Like the strap one, or like actual dick?
I thought you have one.
What?
Do you get to get, because some people get one?
Like.
So do you use the strap on? Do you, okay.
Yeah. No, I don't have like, I don't want bottom surgery.
Okay.
It's just not a thing I want. Some people have issues with that, with like bottom dysphoria. I just don't.
Okay, cool.
So you just have like a thing you put it on. Okay.
Yes. Now I'm curious.
How big is it?
She said it was pretty big. I was like, what are you talking about? This is like my level 2 dildo.
How many levels are we talking about?
Is there a level 3?
I have 4.
Holy shit.
What is the range?
It was maybe like 1.5 inches in girth and about 7.5 in length.
That's level 2?
That's level 2?
Yeah, that's my level 2.
Oh, we got to cancel this show.
Look, when you grow up fucking since like
1.
very early on, you just become a hoe.
Ain't nothing wrong
Wait,
with
if that's level 2, what's level 3?
Do you really want to know?
Yes.
For what?
It's just interesting.
Yeah,
I think
it's actually really
not even
interesting.
interesting as like this is what we think like the community does. It's specific to you.
I guess my concern, well, that's not even like necessary. I mean, maybe it's because there's this thing lately where me being a highly sexual person, which again, I was as a girl. I was like a very sexual, like slutty person in high school. Clearly with the fishnets and the cheetah.
Okay, so
think about it. Child sexual assault.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I like to think of my brain. Think of a brain as like something that's going along a path, right?
Yeah.
And as it goes along this path, gets dunked in like, I don't know, a water of dye. And it's like, okay, it goes through a green dye and then it goes into like a yellow dye and now it's like a green lime dye. And then it goes into like a red and now it's a purple dye. Basically, it's like how I experience these things today has everything to do with how I started experiencing them very early on in life. Because I was exposed to sex so early on, I became a hypersexual person, including as a woman. But when you're a slut as a woman, I mean, feminism applauds it. Like, you know, people would be like, yes, and like,
Like, yes, bitch, get.
yes, exactly.
You are empowered.
I had so much pride in being a slut.
Awesome.
But now I'm a fuckboy.
Yeah, that's rough.
So have you seen like, is there now, do you get shamed for being a fuckboy?
Wow.
And that's sexism.
No. It's more like there's consequences to loving in the specific way that I love.
Yeah.
Now that you become your fuckboy.
Because, well, here's the thing. Because I know what it's like on the other side, when I meet women, especially like, you know, friends of friends, they give me googly eyes often. And I feel like I've had situations where like a girlfriend comes, maybe they bring their man, and then they're giving me attention and have their back completely away from their man. And I'm like, no, I don't want to see your relationship dirty laundry just because I apparently give you attention or treat you in a way that your boyfriend is apparently not. And I don't think a lot of women are used to men who are emotionally available, emotionally mature, who like genuinely pays them like full attention, treats them like a human.
Truth.
And on the one hand, it's like, cool, I have game. But also if I act on it, as in I literally just explore it, it's all consensual, it's all fun. But then later on, I'm still friends with them and we're like, cool, that was a thing we did, but it's not like a big thing. And then they go on to date someone who doesn't like them being friends with me because we fucked around in the past. It's like, that's like, you know, obviously any monogamous relationship or like monogamous culture is very like, why would you talk to an ex or why would you talk to someone who you used to fuck around with? Like most, I think, boyfriends, traditional monogamous ones, would not be okay with their girlfriends talking to someone that they used to fuck around with. Even though I'm like, we did that shit like 3 years ago. It's not even like we're just cool. And that's the consequence of me I didn't learn to distinguish platonic love and romantic love. And to me, it's all just so blurry and gray. And to me, I'm like, I just love to love. But again, because what happens is I tend to have friends who maybe will fuck around a bit. And then we stop. Like, yeah, we tried it out. We scratched the itch and we move forward.
Yeah.
But now some of them, I'm pretty sure, like, Ale fucks around with everybody. Like, Ale makes out with everybody. Like, just a fucking, like, maybe they'll say a slut in a good way, positive connotation. But most of the time, it's, I'm a fuckboy now.
Oh,
something that I was, like, applauded for as a girl is now, like, shamed as a guy. And it's a similar thing with, like, my nonverbals. I used to be very sassy and you did a lot of gestures. I was loud. And people, like, I mean, empowered, loud Latina who's not ashamed of who they are, applauded, absolutely. But when I transitioned and I would give that same South Central attitude or that same sassiness, now they're like, wow, you're coming off really aggressive right now. So I've actually had to adjust my tone and pitch and volume. I don't do as many gestures anymore. I'm aware of like how I stand and like walk and how I carry myself, because if I move in a way that's not quite masculine enough, well, I might maybe I don't get clocked anymore, but maybe someone will think I'm gay. But honestly, I prefer someone to think I'm gay than to know I'm trans. Because it just lets me kind of remain invisible. I mean, that's kind of why I transitioned. I wanted to escape the gender violence. And now the fact that I can be invisible if I want to, that's the privilege. That's the privilege that I transitioned to.
Wow.
Is there something that you label yourself as? Like, you know, some people are like, oh, I'm polyamorous and this, or, you know, gender fluid and this. Is there something specific that to you?
I'm pretty sure I'm I'm pretty sure, like, internally, psychologically, gender fluid as hell, but I will make my way through this world as, like, an effeminate guy.
Yeah.
Because someone down the street will probably not be thinking about that. They'll just see this face and they'll be like, young man. That's it. And then maybe they'll see with, like, I don't know, maybe I have a very... Maybe I'm on the phone and I'm like, oh my God, bitch. And they're like, all right, that's an effeminate young man.
Yeah.
I prefer that than, I was gonna say, than for someone to know that I'm trans. I mean, I guess that's the privilege of passing. That's the privilege.
Yeah.
That's the reason why people get on hormones and have surgeries, is to pass, is to just live your life and blend in with society and just do your thing.
I did want to ask about that.
Yeah.
About the mustache and the beard. How long did that take? And
I've been on T for 5 years.
so you just did it grow instantly?
Just genetics. No, not instantly.
How long did it
Did
take?
you grow
to
your
get
beard instantly?
It was pretty quick. It was pretty quick. But I'm asking for my Asian homies out there who are trying to grow a beard. Like, I'm they just need to take.
I honestly feel a lot better when I find cis men who have the similar struggles as I do with, like, facial hair, with, like, height, with, like, having a big butt, with, like, having a softer face. When it's cis men who experience the same thing I do, I'm like, yeah, I feel safe and secure in belonging.
I want to ask you, now that you're basically seeing both sides of the coin, right? Being a cis female at one point and now a transgender male, and you went from being applauded from, slutting out to being a fuckboy now. Do you see, like, the difficulties? Because now, you say, like, being a fuckboy, you feel like it's shamed, right? For the same actions that you did before as a female. Mm-hmm. So you understand what it's like for males to go through that. Because, like, I'm not a fuckboy. I can never say I can relate to Mario.
Sir.
So it's difficult. So I'm trying to understand.
I have had moments where I became frustrated and I generalized it to the fact that the people who were saying these things about me were women. And then I was like, wait a second.
Is that very common? Because, like, I don't get that, right? But I hear when I talk about other fuckboys.
I could be specific.
Yeah.
I was working at this shop where another artist I worked with, we were going to, like, go on a date, but, like, ended up not. Mm-hmm. And then they took over my half of the station. I left. And then later on I wanted to go back. And they were like, oh, yeah, I can't really make rent right now, so I don't want to stay. Mm-hmm. And I was like, all right, cool. I'll take over the station. And then I hit up the owner, who's also a woman, and I was like, hey, I already spoke to this person, and, I'll take over their station from here on out. Mm-hmm. Just wanted to, like, communicate, like, how things are going to progress from now on. And she came at me like, you are not the person to decide when this person's career ends and, like, whether you're able to take their station. Like, who are you to even assume that we have, like, a spot available? There's plenty of other artists who are, like, trying to take this spot. And I was like, what the fuck? Just, like, why did you come at me like that? Just because I was just so confused that both of them were coming at me and saying that I was being a dick, or I was, like, trying to, like, take the station from a woman who was just starting off her career as a tattoo artist, and I was just some guy being a dick.
Do you think it was because they saw you as a male?
You know what? That's my perception. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of taking it like that because I feel like this is not something that would have happened if I was still a girl. I don't know. Wow. There's a lot of things that I'm like, I feel like this would be a little different if this was coming out of a woman's mouth. And sometimes I'll be like, I wish I could just flip a switch.
Because now we're talking about in the workplace. We're not even just talking about in, like, relationships outside of the workplace, like being a fuckboy as far as, like, like being a male fooling around. But you're talking about, like, now women are deeming you as, like, you're trying to take away, like, a spot from another woman because you're a male. Like, that's...
Wait. That's such a... I don't think that's an accurate way of putting that.
It's crazy because you've experienced sexism from both genders.
Yeah. You experienced more sexism than a lot of people.
There's a reason why trans people were, like, spiritual leaders back in the day and, like, other cultures and other tribes. I mean, being able to see both sides of, like, two social categories, I think does give you a level of insight on, like, the perspective of each side. And I feel like I have actively, consciously integrated myself into both. Or at least I did as a woman. But honestly, there's a lot more flexibility to femininity. Like you could, have different types of hairstyles. You could have different types of fashion. You're still going to be a woman. And like nobody really thinks twice. Like there's so much variety in women's like fashion and like beauty. But with men, it's like like today, this is pretty, it's like soft boy vibes.
I keep even hearing that word. What's a soft boy?
You're a soft boy.
I'm a soft boy? What does that even mean?
Maybe like archetype. I feel like as I've socialized myself into masculinity, well, first of all, how am I going to learn to do that? How, like, it's either through my peers or through media. So when it comes to learning masculinity, I remember I started paying attention to how guys stand, like the way they position their feet. And the way you stand and where you put your arms, or when they talk, like how they move their arms, if they move them at all, not smiling often.
Kanye.
You know how there's those memes about like sending an email as a guy versus sending an email as a girl? And,
No.
Oh, I just see these memes of like, oh, instead of being like, oh, hi, sorry to bother you. If you have any time today, if you're able to get to this thing, kind of like a sorry for being an inconvenience, whereas like masculine, or I guess men's emails are very like, you do this thing by this time. Bye. Straightforward, to the point, serious. I guess it's things that would be valued in the corporate world.
Okay.
Whereas the other, the former would be seen as kind of like passive or a bit submissive. It's not something that's exactly seen as leadership material type.
I would assume that's
It's like
because
literally being an emotional person is not seen as a leadership skill in the corporate world, I think. Even though I feel like that's what allows you to be a people person, knowing how to deal with like difficult emotions, difficult situations.
Man, all right, that is a crazy topic. I think that's gonna be definitely a tangent, because in the business world where you work in big like corporate companies, a lot of the CEOs are deemed as like basically psychopaths or sociopaths, because like they don't feel the guilt of slashing the workforce in half. They could just do it and be like, well, the dollars are coming in.
Well, because they're not personally connected with those people either.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is that like there are a very few amount of CEOs that do well because they are connected with people, or that they are like emotionally intelligent. Most of them, they do things through numbers. Numbers is what matters to them. And that's why there's that disconnect. And I think that's, again, a totally different conversation. But I get where you're coming from, and it is a weird corporate like societal thing that's been happening for a long time. But I definitely think it's changing.
Well, we also have to think about the fact that where do our social norms come from for you? Like, where do your scripts for being a man and, expectations for being a man and a woman come from? They come from
media and family.
That's the ideology. But what is that ideology supporting? The society we live in, like the actual society. And that society is what kind? A capitalist one. So I feel like that, and that culture, those ideas, those perceptions you don't just do those in the workplace. You start doing that with your family. You start doing that with your friends. It's like, I don't know if this is getting a little too like far. I guess I'm just maybe getting a little too deep into like where all these things come from. It's kind of like there's a reason for why we're all so disconnected from each other, and why there are people who are sociopaths at the top of the ladder. And it's because living in a capitalist society encourage you to exploit, to step on people's necks, to get yourself ahead, to be individualist.
So, sorry, I'm really curious, because I know you're a tattoo artist, but we're talking about things in a corporate world. Are you talking about like a corporate tattoo
yes.
shop? Oh,
yes.
What shop is this?
I work part-time at this company called Ephemeral Tattoos. They do these things called made-to-fade tattoos. So,
I've seen those.
I've been seeing a lot more of those pop up.
Yeah. I'm an artist for them.
Oh, okay.
So it's basically the founders are like bioengineers, and they used to work in like cancer research. And they came up with this fluid that basically it's made out of ingredients that your body naturally breaks down.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they kind of just like added tint to it.
Let's get tatted.
Yeah, you could get a real tattoo, like the actual like needle and everything.
Oh, now you want to get a tattoo?
Wait, is it an actual needle and everything?
Yeah,
Oh.
it's exactly the same as a
So it
tattoo.
still hurts?
The only thing, yes,
Okay,
the only
never
thing that's different, the only thing that's different is the ink.
How long does it last?
And it's about a year to 2 years, some
not
up to
bad.
3 years, depends. But it's interesting to see an industry that was traditionally always privately owned to be attempted at in a corporate.
I've never
setting.
heard of that. That's why I was curious.
I mean, it's nice to have a salary instead of
true.
commission. Usually the commission is a 50% split.
Oh, is that
At
how it
tattoo
works
shops.
at regular
Yeah.
shops?
Yeah,
50%
either
split?
a rent split, which is usually when they don't offer much. You just pay your rent, and then you keep all the money that you charge from your tattoos.
Yeah.
Or there's some shops where you pay with the 50% split. So any tattoo I do, if I charge $200 for it, I'm getting $100 of that.
That's crazy. That sounds like a terrible deal.
So the reason why is because when you're starting off, the shops will usually provide supplies, and then they'll also provide the clientele.
So is it meant for you to like outgrow those shops?
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay, so it's like a
Definitely.
starting point.
Yeah. Most tattoo artists have been at like at least 5 shops.
Oh wow.
I've been in about close to 5.
Oh wow. So there's something I kind of want to ask you about that has to relate to your job too. Like, do you have like a specific clientele that you like tattoo? I mean, you're in LA, right? There, you have a huge clientele. There's like a lot of diversity, right? But I mean, your art in general, like I've seen some of your tattoos. They're great, I'm just curious, like, what does that, like, who does that usually cater to? Is there a specific thing? Because you've always been artistic. Was that kind of always like your style?
I mean, going through all that shit as a kid, my coping mechanism was drawing. Yeah. So I was that kid that would be in the corner drawing for hours and hours. I remember when I was in Mexico, I would go every year for like 6 months out of the year.
Oh, that's a long time.
And when it would start raining and the power would go out, because it was in a little ranch, they wouldn't fix the power for about like a day or so. And I would there was nothing to do. You couldn't watch TV, you couldn't go out because the streets were flooded, and I would just stay and draw for hours. And when I got sick of drawing, I just kept drawing because there was nothing else to do. Yeah. The point of that was that I had a lot of time to draw. And I feel like I basically trained myself to draw. Actually, when I around the same time that I transitioned, I was going through like just recovery in general, trying to fix myself and all the fucking toxic traits I had picked up through being through so much abusive shit. I didn't even mention the fact that I was in like several abusive relationships in my teenage years.
Oh no, yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Sorry, not several. They were all long term, but they were actually very different. The first one was very abusive. He was like a Nazi punk. I didn't realize that. I was like, he's just really into World War II memorabilia.
You see, like,
when you're 13,
holy
like,
shit.
When you're 13 and nobody teaches you that, like, about racism or like, I don't know. I didn't know, honestly. I just went with the flow. That sounded very bad.
I mean, you're a kid.
The point is, when I was 13, because I was always kind of like I need attention. Like, why did this thing like suddenly stop? And now you try to seek that attention somewhere else. And I started dating that guy. We were together for maybe 2.5 years. But yeah, he was very racist. He was pretty homophobic. He basically made me believe that I wasn't bisexual because I was dating a guy at the time. Therefore, I'm not bisexual anymore. Therefore, I was straight. Which is not true.
No.
And he would control what I wore. He'd control who my friends were. He'd control. I remember he'd be like, but at the time, I liked dressing like a slut.
Yeah.
So obviously, he found me hot enough to go after me and try to date me. But then wouldn't like it when I was out on my own without him because now I was subject to everybody else getting at me.
Attention.
Right. So he'd be like, oh, I would safety pin my T-shirts that I would cut up like that. I would safety pin them to my bra. And I would look down because he said, oh, if you make eye contact with men, that's why they say something to you. That's why they catcall you, because you make eye contact with them. You're basically inviting them.
Yeah, obviously it's not true, but yeah. That's...
But you get that perpetrator logic. I was probably my most suicidal at that point when I was with him.
Oh, wow.
And then I went to therapy, and I remember my therapist told me something that really helped. I think she said, you know, you don't have to confront every single one of your problems. You don't have to confront and resolve every single one of them. You can run away from them.
Really?
Wow.
I know. I was like, wait, what? What do you mean? And she's like, well, your parents are like separate, right? And your mom has her own place. Like, why are you with your dad and your brother if y'all are fighting all the time? And you have this guy who's like stalking you and like, you know, trying to keep you on a leash. You could just leave and go with your mom. And I was like, that's a good idea.
That makes sense, actually.
Yeah, and so I left, and that guy, the Nazi punk guy, actually didn't stop stalking me until I started dating another guy. So basically, he didn't stop harassing me until he realized I was another guy's property.
Wow.
That guy was actually pretty nice. I feel like I was able to really integrate myself into like a wifey role.
So that was kind of like a semi-healthy relationship or healthy
It
relationship?
was. I would say it was a healthy relationship. In fact, I was the toxic one.
Really?
Yeah, I was so...
When did you realize that? Was that in hindsight or was it
In
during?
hindsight.
Oh,
In hindsight.
wow.
I knew that everything I had learned on how to survive in my previous abusive relationship were now things that were degrading my healthy relationship. So being suspicious because I'm used to my former partner cheating on me when they act strange. What else? I wanted to see him often every single day because my ex demanded that he see me every single day.
Yeah.
And so that's what I was used to. To me, that's what you do with a partner. You see them every single day and you dedicate your whole attention and life and love to them.
Yeah, it seems like there's always been a blueprint for you. And it seemed like you had to hear. Obviously, that's not the case anymore. And you're kind of learning your way around, I would say, more of your true self, right? It's not something that someone's telling you have to act like a certain way, be a certain way. It's kind of like what you resonate with more.
Yes and no.
Okay.
There's still a blueprint, but now it's up to me how much I want to conform to it.
Oh, of course.
There is a blueprint for masculinity. I mean, when I came in here, like you said, you and Mario did your best to set the stage for a very comfortable space because there's a lot of vulnerability that goes on in these conversations. That's not usually the goal when I meet strangers, especially men.
Oh.
Most of the time, I feel like it's either immediate respect or immediate disrespect. Like every single person you see on the street, you judge at least a little bit, or I don't know. Maybe that's just what I perceive. But either way, I am always thinking about how am I coming off to this person. I would think that that's a thing that everybody does.
No.
No?
I mean,
No.
not. I mean,
Not all the time.
Not all the time.
Yeah.
Really?
And maybe not as much as I've gotten older. Maybe when I was younger.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I think, people on the street, I don't really like judge them. I'm just, it doesn't matter to me. But I think this is my own personal, for me, where it's like I've gotten to the point where it's like I don't care about other people's perceptions of myself. I can acknowledge it. I understand you perceive me in a certain way, but the way I live my life is not gonna, I'm not gonna take other people's opinions and have that affect me.
I mean, if I could have that thought process and genuinely believe it, I feel like that's maybe everybody's goal.
You can.
Yeah.
The thing is, though, there's a whole stigma against who I am fundamentally as a person, a trans person. Like, there's a huge stigma against trans people.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to do it. Like, there's so many, even just in what I've talked about here, I'm 100% sure people are going to say that I'm not really trans, or that they're going to say that a lot of things I say are, I don't know, not reflective of most people's narratives.
Try and validate your experience.
Right. It's just, there are rewards to following scripts.
Yeah.
To trying to gain respect from men. I mean, I'm now a guy. I pass as a guy, and I still struggle in building friendships with men because I never was one.
Yeah.
So I feel like I remember when I started having guys start locker room talk with me, even though they didn't know me, and I was like, is this what men talk about? Like, is this how it is? I remember I was sitting outside of Taco Bell. It was after my shift. I guess I passed as a guy, and this guy came up to me and he was selling some sunglasses out of his backpack, And he started talking about like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go right now and meet some girl and fuck her. Like, and I was like, did you just hump and moan in front of a fucking stranger? Like, what? And then I was like, nah, I'm not really like that. Like, I don't know, I like people. And he was like, oh yeah, whatever lands, huh? And I was like, no. But you get, I am now the weird kid. If I was at a party and that was the topic, like locker room talk, I will not fit in. I will probably leave. Or I just would be the fucking weird one, or maybe I'd be the sensitive one, or either way, I feel like I wouldn't be readily accepted over the fact that I'm not, I was not like, locker room talk and stuff like that was not normal for me. In fact, it was the triggering thing for me.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's been really difficult to connect with men when they don't know I'm trans, but then when they do know, they treat me slightly differently.
I feel like that is on the other end of the spectrum as far as like how men act, because there are plenty of guys who are my friends where we never have locker room talk. It's actually always about like self-improvement and like betterment of like your character as a person. But there are moments where there are locker room talks. I'm not going to say that, I'm like innocent of it.
You're fucking thirsty.
I haven't drank any water the entire time, right? But really, like, in the very end, it just comes down to like how respectful you're going to be about it. I think that's really what matters. And,
that's why I'm picky.
Yeah. To a person who like doesn't even know you and talks to you like that and just readily assumes that you're gonna feed into them, like that's I don't know.
That's why it's really important for me to find those friendships where it's men who are a little bit more self-aware, a little bit more in touch with their emotional side, okay with being somewhat vulnerable. To me, that's how friendships are built, through vulnerability.
Yeah, for sure.
You disclose things, they disclose things. You're supportive to them, they're supportive to you. It's reciprocal. But when the conversations are small talk, locker room talk, I don't know. I just there's just a whole different world that I feel like some men have experienced and been normalized into that I'm just like, I did not grow up being a participant of this.
So I would say, first, you have respect from both of us. We like you, you're cool.
Yeah.
You're one of the dudes,
Yo,
Hey.
cheers.
But, and maybe this is me being insensitive, but I think it's just adapting. It doesn't matter that you're trans or a guy, and I'm not trying to diminish your experience, but I've known girls that like have like locker room talk with guys,
Oh yeah, no, I do that. I did that as a girl.
Yeah. So you know what it's like. Like sometimes it's an internal thing. That's
so.
But see, you're limiting yourself, and you can see it. You're aware of it.
I would say I'm aware of it, but the thing is, it's not something that's willfully in my control. It's something that's a result of my trauma.
Yeah,
and
of course.
And so it's kind of like it's like there's a fire alarm in my head, and it goes off at the sniff of a fire, at the sound of the scratch of a match, and it just screams like there's a fire, there is danger, there is a threat. So it's I guess just knowing that I'm aware that it happens doesn't make it easier to
But if you were a woman and you participated then while still having the same history, shouldn't you be able to do the same as a man?
I guess I see it as participating in misogyny. And honestly, when I first came out to myself, I didn't want to be a man. I didn't want to be a trans guy because I didn't want to be a guy. I didn't want to be a part
of that side of the guy.
My perpetrators, of that social category of my perpetrators. And I saw integrating myself into masculinity as almost integrating myself into misogyny if I went through that route, if I was okay with those things and just like, this is just a thing that guys talk about.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm trying to, my goal when I started transitioning and I started passing was trying to find the niche masculinity that I fit with. I don't know. Like I resonated a lot with, for example, Gerard Way, the singer of My Chemical Romance, because the way he performs is he's like, or like Freddie Mercury.
Oh, I love
like very effeminate gay men who, they're loved, they're appreciated, they're artistic, they're expressive. I found, I guess I identified with them. And that's where I would model my masculinity after.
Yeah.
Either people I saw in the media, like who I was like, yes, I like that. And that is what I want to model after, that kind of masculinity. Or I just have friends who are cis men and I really love the way that the way they carry themselves and the way they interact with people. I'm like, oh, okay, it's not just like I'm injecting liquid misogyny into myself every week and then I'm...
Look, I think masculinity is what you make it. You know, we each have our own definition of it, and we get it from, you know what, family, media, other people that we interact with. But at the end of the day, it is what you make it. What you define as a man for yourself is just yourself, you know? But I hear, and this is not me, and maybe it's me being insensitive, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but like you tell me these things where like, and it sounds like you have these like kind of like limiting ideas of like what you can and can't do for yourself, where it's like you can't talk shop or you can't like adapt to this, you know?
It's not that I can't say I don't want to.
Oh, okay, that you don't want to, you know? But you feel that doesn't mean you can't be a dude, you know? That just because you don't want to talk about it, like...
It doesn't matter what I want to be. I'm put into that box. Like, when you're trans, you either are visibly or invisibly trans, like they call it passing, right? I pass.
Yeah.
So that struggle is entirely in my head.
Yes.
And it's not a struggle that most other guys, cis men, go through.
Yeah.
And when you don't pass, then, well, they're not like, well, you're not a normal cis guy. You're not a normal cis girl. You're somewhere in between. You're something weird. You're something taboo. And I think to say like, oh, it's you're self-limiting yourself kind of is ignoring the fact that like, no, we've been subject to this gaze for a long time. And I'm not going to pretend like it's so easy to just be like, oh, fuck that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to pay attention to that. Like, I feel like maybe you probably know what it's like to experience a certain type of gaze related to a different identity. I don't know, maybe being Latino and going to like a very rich white space. Like, you know, you get looks.
Yeah.
Whether they're good or bad, whether they're fetishistic or disgusted, you know that gaze. So imagine that, but just amplified so much more frequently and it being overtly microaggressive towards you. And that's the norm.
Okay.
It's just being used to being subject to that gaze. It's not easy to just be like, well, fuck them. I don't need that. It's easy to now that I pass and I can be invisible. But if you're visibly queer, visibly trans, and you face those microaggressions every day on a very overt level, it's difficult to be like, to disregard it.
Okay, that helps me understand a bit more.
Okay, so I kind of want to talk
I think about how
this.
strong the stigma still is today. There's literally laws being passed against trans people to ban us from public life.
Oh yeah, I saw the Tennessee thing. That seems crazy.
So sorry, I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent because when we were talking about locker room talk and how like it's basically in your words saying that it's like partaking in misogyny, like I think that I can see why you look at it like that, but misogyny is something that, you know, just maybe educate me. That's something towards women, right? Like basically you're discriminating against women or making them less or whatever reason, but it is a thing that's tailored towards women. And the reason why I kind of want to speak about that is because I have a lot of gay friends and my gay friends are guys.
They're misogynist too. They can be.
Towards men?
Misogyny is detrimental to both men and women.
It's like they have locker room talk, but they're just describing men, you know? Like my girlfriend's like, dude, look at that dude's ass. I totally fuck smash. Like, dude, that like I would, you know how many things I would do that shit.
Oh, God.
And I'm like, well, I maybe because, you know, again, I'm closed minded or something, but like I wouldn't view that as misogyny. It's just like objectification of the sex that they're attracted to, you know? And to me, that's like locker room talk too. But it's now directed towards like a male, and you know, which is why I take out the female element of like what it's like to be misogynistic, and it's just like a objectification of the sex that you're
of a body.
The body. Yeah,
it's just generally sexual objectification.
Yeah.
And I would say there's also like gay culture is also just like encourages kind of, I don't know. Wait, actually, I'm very new to gay culture, so I feel like I don't even know how to speak on that.
Yeah.
When I think of participating in misogyny, kind of like dehumanizing someone, but not in a way that's like fun or having to do with like wanting to have fun with that person and wanting to experiment with that person. There's like a positive attribute to that. I mean, when someone starts talking about their girlfriend and hating them, but still going home to go lie to them, or
Okay.
normalizing cheating.
But cheating can happen with either sex or any of the sexes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I think that's where I'm like confused right now is because.
This whole thing is fucking confusing.
Yeah, it's really
He's like, my life has been
why
confused.
do you think?
Why do you,
Yeah.
sir?
Yeah, no. Here
Yeah.
I am.
Sir, I'm
like,
a ball of confusion here.
yeah. And that's why I'm talking to you because I'm trying to kind of like flesh out the thoughts and really like understand.
These are the kind of struggles that I literally think about all the time.
right?
And this is why it's so difficult for me to navigate relationships, and why it's so difficult to navigate new friendships, because I'm like, this is new territory for me. And all I can do, honestly, is be my weird self. And you're either cool with it and we get along and we'll have a great time, we'll be friends.
Yeah.
Or you won't like it, you'll be thrown off by it, you'll notice I'm just a little bit off, and you'll want to run away. And frankly, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Because I'm picky
like a
anyway.
filter.
Yeah, so that's why I don't worry about the theory of it too much. I just decide whether I want to continue participating in that particular group or in that particular situation. I know for a fact not all men are trash. Otherwise, I'm joining the trash.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anybody can be bad and an unhealthy person and a toxic person, and at the same time be a good, healthy person.
Yeah.
Those things exist at the same time all the time. I feel like sometimes when we talk about like, oh yeah, I used to be problematic, or like, I guess think of it as used to, as if it's never gonna happen again.
Yeah.
Is like, nah, I mean, just I guess everybody has an ugly side.
Yeah.
And you still have to like, you still have to let that person know that they are still loved and supported even through that ugly side.
Exactly.
Because if you try to ignore that ugly side, or you pretend like it doesn't exist, then it'll keep going on. Or
Probably get worse. Usually.
or get worse because you're pretending it doesn't exist, or you're enabling it.
I love and support you even though you're toxic, Peter.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
I actually have a friend who's being very toxic to their partner right now. And I've witnessed it, and I'm like, fuck. I know it's a result of trauma. I don't know what to do most of the time, except for when she's past that moment of being angry or lashing out. I mean, I just have to kind of wait until that passes, to then later bring it up when it's more relevant, or when it's a more of a calm personal situation where they won't take it personally or defensively. That's really hard to have a conversation with a friend that like, hey, what you're doing is like, it's not in service of you. It's not in service of your relationship. Yes, there's fault on both parts, but like, and yes, there's a reason for it. Like, you're not a bad person. I don't hate you. You're not going to be canceled. We've all gone through shit. We've learned how to survive through really toxic and maladaptive habits. But we do have a responsibility to work against those things.
Yeah, no, definitely. And that's our friend Jake Charles just said something very kind of like description of that would be like, that's the duality of the human experience, you know? There's no such thing as a person that's only good or only bad. And it's really easy to write people off when, you know, I guess in general, we're taught to kind of really focus on the negatives. And no matter how much time you put into like the positive things, like the negatives usually overshadow it. And, you know, it's not to say that like we glaze over it. Like we should work on it and try to improve. But I think sometimes kind of let off on like maybe focusing on such like negative thoughts.
Psychologically speaking, it takes 5 good things to overpower 1 negative thing.
Oh, really?
Yes. But I think what helps more, instead of I always think of things as like, you know, the whole, all things are temporary, this too shall pass, good and bad, and it will be back. Like, we are always in a constant state of change in our relationships. Everybody's growing as their own person, and your relationships either grow closer or they grow apart.
Yeah.
And whether you're open and flexible to that change, well, that's the hard part. Because some people are not ready for, say, I remember when my ex would say, you know, the love we have today is not the same as it was when we were together. I'm like, no shit. Or when we got together early in our relationship, I'm like, of course not. Like, we've been together for 2 years. The person I was back then is not the person I am today. And I was very early in my tattooing career. That takes over your whole life. I would leave home around like 9 a.m. and I would come back around 10 or 11 p.m. And then I would work on a design for the next day at 10 a.m. again.
Yeah.
And my girlfriend would say that I was neglecting her I just wasn't spending time with her. I just wasn't
Absorbed in your
present.
work. Yeah.
Exactly. And I remember one of my coworkers said, "Congratulations, you're a man because you just chose your work over your girlfriend."
You know, it's funny. I was going to tell you the same thing right now. I'm like, you got hustle. You got to focus on that before your relationships.
And that's such a norm as a guy.
It is.
That's literally considered kind of a role, is like the breadwinner, the provider.
The words right out of my mouth. Society puts you in this role where it's like, as a man, you have to be the breadwinner, you have to be the provider, you have to be able to take care of your partner and your family. So I
would say that role is what normalized my behavior of focusing entirely on work, so that I didn't have to focus on my relationship problems.
So I kind of want to ask you about something that we talked about yesterday with our guests. Like, have you heard of hypergamy? Hypergamy?
Huh?
What?
Hypergamy?
I have no idea what
I have
you're
no
saying.
idea what you're saying.
Hypergamy is
Hypergamy.
the act of dating upwards.
Oh, hypergamy. Oh, I see what you're saying.
Hypergamy, yeah.
Oh, the red pill thing?
Hypergamy. Gamy.
It's not a red pill thing, but
Oh, it's not?
it's always been like that.
Gamy implies marriage.
Yeah, so back then it was like you would get like a girl from like a village, and then they would try to marry up to like a
Hypergamy.
king. You know, so yeah, that was like a marriage thing, but now it's kind of like just talking about in the, I guess, relative to dating, right? So like, guys being breadwinners and making money and stuff like that. Being that like you're a trans male, I'm assuming you date a lot of females, right? Whether cis or trans, but do you notice that women tend to date up still? Meaning like they want you to be the breadwinner. They want you to be the provider. They want you to be the person who's like giving them a safe space. Is that still the case? Or do you feel like that's not the case in the community that you're in now?
I don't feel like that's going to be as prevalent of a case for me, because I almost exclusively date bisexuals.
Okay.
You kind of have to be bisexual to date me.
Really?
Well, I can't imagine a cis straight girl who likes masculine men and dick. I can't imagine them being into me for too long once they find out that once they know that I'm trans, once I've revealed that. I don't like how I'm saying that.
No.
Once it's because it makes it seem like it's a secret, when it's more like, I mean, like, sure, in the sense that it's so much easier to just go through life and nobody knows that, so nobody acts weird. But also, in order to be close to me, you have to know this about me.
Of course, yeah.
So it's kind of like, if I let you in and I let you know that that is a part of me, that means I intend to keep you around.
It's like your seal of approval. Like, now you're in the circle.
It's more like you don't show any immediate red flags.
Yeah.
And I'm comfortable enough to just like let people know, because I think it explains how off I am, or like how I'm a little bit different from like other, I don't know, maybe I'm not. This is how I think of myself. I feel like I just have a certain personality that isn't a traditionally masculine one. And I feel like people knowing that I've been on the other side and I spent my whole life on the other side at least explains or puts context to like my weird untraditional behavior.
Oh, okay.
Maybe it's me just trying to like be like, hey, by the way, if I'm weird, this is why.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's my autistic side though. That's my neurodivergence. Like,
Yeah, I can see that. I mean,
it's really just me trying to feel safe in any space I go to.
Yeah.
But there have been situations where like I don't say anything and everything's fine.
Yeah.
But then I say something related to relationships, and then people are like, how the fuck do you know all this about like, relationship stuff? And along with, studying relationships, I'm like, I know what it's like on the other side of being a girlfriend, of being the wifey, of being the submissive, of being the one who's cheated on, of being... But then all those things are still like relatable.
Yeah.
Because men and women, we both want both. Everybody wants the same thing. Everybody wants to connect. Everyone wants to feel loved. Everybody wants to be liked and accepted. Some people just have a lot more barriers, whether they're internal or environmental.
Hey guys, welcome back to Lightning Round, where we ask our guests some rapid fire questions. If they can't answer on time, they got a drink. Ale, are you ready?
Yep.
3, 2, 1. What's your favorite alcohol?
drink.
Drink this tequila.
I was gonna say IPA. God damn it.
IPA,
I had to
really?
think about that. Oh, I'm
You
sorry.
drink out
Yeah.
of it, yeah.
Stouts. I love stouts. When they taste like
really?
coffee.
Oh, okay. So you're a coffee person then. No?
It puts me to sleep. It's a dessert.
Oh, okay.
I just like bitter flavors in general.
If you could change one thing about yourself, what would you change? Still have to answer.
Yeah, you said this.
That question could be taken in so many ways.
know.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I
you
overthink things.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
Just
you take it anyway.
answer however you want it.
I wish I didn't experience trauma.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. That's great.
No, actually, that's not. No, actually, who I am today is because of my trauma.
All right, if you could change one physical thing about yourself, what would you change?
Having a dick.
I knew it.
No, you were waiting for me to say that.
Yeah, I was. That's
not
I was going to
real.
transition to my next question. How big is the level 4?
2.5 in girth, 12 in length.
Christ.
Have you used it?
Of course I do.
Like fully?
No, my pussy doesn't go deep enough.
So,
Wait, it's on your. I thought it's a strap on.
Oh,
yeah.
Sir.
depends.
Oh.
Oh my
then
god!
are
Why
you-
did I say that?
Well, since you said that, like,
I'm
again,
both. Look, remember I said
Yeah.
topping was a new sex act.
Oh,
it's new.
It's
right.
not a thing I do frequently. I usually bottom.
Oh.
Okay, now, okay.
See, I was thinking you put that thing on and you like go to town on someone.
No, that's still a very new thing. That's still a thing that I'm getting used to.
Oh, okay.
All
Okay.
right, now we know.
Got any
Oh.
volunteers? Let me know.
What's your favorite artist?
Tattoo artist?
No, a music artist.
My Chemical Romance.
Okay. Of
course.
If you were a DJ, what would your DJ name be?
Oh, definitely
No,
Drake for sure.
no. Dude, it took me like months to come up with my tattoo name.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Alec Craft Tattoos.
It used to be Sin Tattoos.
Oh, I saw that in some like comments or something like that.
It was because at the time when I named it, I was still in grad school. I was really into Foucault, and so maybe DJ Sin.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, that
DJ
makes a lot of sense, actually.
It was the actual term was synopticon, and a synopticon is the opposite of a panopticon. A panopticon is like something that like Foucault analyzed. It was basically like a structure for building prisons where very few guards at the center in the tower are able to watch over a lot of inmates, kind of like these cells are the inmates, and then the center is the security tower.
Oh, wow.
It basically is the idea that people feel like they're always being watched, even if there isn't anyone actually there. So they start policing themselves.
Oh, okay.
So
Wow,
so a synopticon is the opposite of that. Instead of the few can watch over the many watch over the few. And people didn't like that explanation. It was way too long. So I just shortened it to sin, as in sinner.
When's the last time you cried?
Oh, yesterday.
Why?
Just felt like crying.
Okay. What makes you the most happiest?
When I tattoo something really meaningful on a stranger and they start crying.
Oh. Do you have a fetish?
Twinks that are taller than me.
Your favorite food?
Pozole.
What's your biggest life lesson that you've learned?
That everything is always changing and always in motion. And you either adapt or you don't. When you don't, you crash and die.
Yeah.
And when you adapt, you grow and learn.
Your favorite part about LA?
LA is so diverse. Like nothing in LA is a surprise because it's kind of like it's a free for all. Don't be shocked by anything you see here, and if you are shocked, just don't make it a big deal.
But what's your favorite part about it, though? Like, what's this one thing you're like, this I really love about LA? No other place kind of has it.
I don't know. I mean, I grew up here. I know a lot of people here. Feel like it's big but small. There's a lot of people packed into LA, but everybody somehow knows each other. Like you know someone and they know someone that you know from another scene.
what I came here.
It's like everybody's like somehow indirectly connected.
Nice.
It's kind of a place where everybody else in the country tries to flock to.
Yeah.
And then they like, I don't know, it's its own little like unique bubble that I feel very safe in. Because it's such a like free for all and like nobody cares what you look like, nobody cares what you do. I feel like that's why it's so safe for like overtly queer people to just be like, you can just express yourself. Nobody's gonna give a shit. Nobody's gonna say anything.
What's one thing you would not eat?
I fucking hate liver.
Okay, that's all I hear that from.
Okay, wait, I'll eat it though. I don't know.
Ass?
I eat an ass. You know, I don't want to try frog's legs.
Oh, they're not that bad. They taste like chicken.
I hear that, but I just can't stop looking at the fact that it looks like an ass.
But you just
I
said.
only like real ass.
But you just said.
I only like real ass.
Oh,
Not
got
cooked
it.
frog's ass.
If you could live somewhere on the East Coast, where would it be?
I've never been to the East Coast. I don't know anything about the East Coast.
But there's not one place that you're curious about?
Probably New York. Yeah.
Nice. What's your favorite tattoo style that you don't do?
That I don't want.
That you don't do? Like a style. Like, let's say...
A style that I like that I don't do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like Japanese, fine line.
I really like anime styles. I don't do anime styles.
Your favorite tattoo artist?
This artist named Free Orgy, at Free Orgy. Their name is Pony Reinhardt. Yeah, Pony Reinhardt. They're from New York. It's probably the reason why I would want to go to get tattooed by them. They charge like $500 an hour, so I'm like,
Wow, that's crazy. I mean, good for them, but damn, that's wild.
I know. I'm like, I really hope I get to that point in my career. I could charge $500 an hour and just like live comfortably in New York.
What's one thing that you're proud of yourself for overcoming?
I'm proud that I'm not a cold, bitter, standoffish person, despite everything I've been through. That was the last one? Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's solid.
All right, guys, that concludes our lightning round. I want to say thank you to our very informative and funny guest, Ale. Let us know where we can find you.
You can find me at Ale Crafts Tattoos on Instagram.
And thank you guys for tuning in. It was a very entertaining episode and very educational. Make sure you like, subscribe, and comment below what you guys want us to talk about next. And remember, live fast, eat ass.